Friday afternoon, November 17, 2023, 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. Sam Altman logs onto a Google Meet call, expecting a totally routine meeting. Minutes later, Chief Scientist Ilya Sutskever and board members Helen Toner and Tasha McCauley pull the rug completely out from under him. They strip him of his title, boot him out the door, and by 12:30 p.m., OpenAI drops this bizarre press release. They literally claim he was not consistently candid in his communications and that the board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI.
12:30 p.m. 30 minutes after a routine check-in, a $86 billion tech juggernaut just decapitates its own chief executive officer.
Yeah, mate, off with his head. No financial fraud alleged, no criminal master plan, just this vague corporate slap on the wrist. And Silicon Valley completely stopped breathing. But look, behind all that immediate shock lay a much dirtier question. Who actually controls the most powerful technology on the planet? Is it the suits sitting in the boardroom or the engineers down in the trenches?
You know, what gets me about this whole setup is the sheer illusion of authority. On paper, OpenAI was structured under this really strange hybrid setup from 2019. A nonprofit board with literally zero financial equity held the total legally binding right to fire the CEO at any second.
Right. And that board's sacred duty was supposed to be protecting humanity, right? Ensuring artificial general intelligence benefits everyone, even if it meant driving the commercial side straight into bankruptcy.
Exactly. But mate, when they pulled that trigger, they wiped out a $13 billion partnership with Microsoft in a blink. And Microsoft stock dropped 3% within hours. It is like watching a traffic cop try to stop a speeding freight train by holding up a plastic clipboard. It looks completely airtight on paper, but the second real-world momentum hits, that paper tiger just shatters into a million pieces.
A plastic clipboard against a freight train. That is literally the ultimate corporate power trip, isn't it?
Think of it like a premier 3 Michelin star kitchen. The owners hold the legal deed to the building. They own the recipes. They sign every paycheck. One afternoon, the owners decide the head chef is being way too risky, serving unvetted experimental dishes at breakneck speed to corner the market. So, thoroughly self-righteous, they fire the head chef on the spot to save the dining public from food poisoning.
And then they step back into the dining room, feeling like absolute legends, right?
Right. Only to turn around and watch every single line cook, dishwasher, and sommelier strip off their aprons, slam down their knives, and march right out the back door together.
That ideological schism was deep. On one side, you had Sam Altman and Greg Brockman speed-running commercial sales, pushing custom enterprise tools and taking billions from Satya Nadella at Microsoft. On the other side, you had the effective altruists on the board, led by Ilya Sutskever, who felt Altman was bypassing safety protocols and keeping them completely blindfolded in the dark.
So the board thinks firing him is this noble, heroic move. But then came the 48-hour interim CEO parade. First, they put in Mira Murati as interim CEO for about 2 days. Then, by Sunday, November 19, they replace her with former Twitch boss Emmett Shear. Meanwhile, Microsoft chief Satya Nadella is sitting back in Seattle, quietly setting up an in-house AI department, ready to hire every single person who leaves.
It is the classic dynamic of what we call the clown shoe club. Corporate boards hiding behind vague press releases and deliberative review processes, totally convinced that legal authority equals actual operational control. They forget that the company isn't the charter on the wall, it's the human talent sitting at the keyboards.
Monday morning, November 20, 3 a.m. A total nuclear open letter starts floating around internal chat channels. 745 out of 770 OpenAI employees sign their names on it. That is over 95% of the entire workforce.
And the wording was completely brutal. The letter told the board, and I am quoting here, "Your conduct has made it clear you did not have the competence to oversee OpenAI. They literally demanded the board resign and bring Altman back immediately, or else everyone walks straight over to Microsoft before lunch.
745 employees. And then comes the biggest plot twist of the whole weekend. Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist who actually organized the coup in the first place, has a sudden crisis of conscience. He posts on X that he deeply regrets his participation in the board's actions, and then he signs the employee revolt letter targeting his own board.
You couldn't write a script this wild if you tried, mate. Talk about a complete zero-day shift in leverage. In modern tech, 3-inch compliance binders and legal charters don't mean a thing if the people holding the code keys decide to slam their laptops shut and walk away.
But wait, let's step back for a second. Because I think there is a really dangerous precedent here that we shouldn't just gloss over. I mean, yes, the board was out of touch with reality. But if a company's workforce can completely override legal board oversight the moment their stock options or commercial ambitions are threatened, what happens to actual safety guardrails? Doesn't that mean safety checks only exist until they get inconvenient for business?
That is a really sharp question, Emily. Is it a triumph of worker leverage, or is it just commercial momentum steamrolling the only ethical emergency brake we have?
Well, by Wednesday, November 22, the board held 0 cards. If they stayed stubborn, they were going to be ruling over an empty building and an empty software repository. So, at midnight, the board completely surrendered. Sam Altman and Greg Brockman returned as undisputed rulers. The non-profit idealists were ousted, and a brand new corporate board was installed, headed by former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers and former Salesforce co-CEO Brett Taylor.
In under 100 hours, the power shifted permanently away from philosophical governance and straight into the hands of institutional capital, enterprise strategy, and critical engineering talent. The board thought legal paperwork gave them absolute sovereignty, but sovereignty actually lived in the engine room.
Which brings us directly to today's Club Genius lesson. Power does not belong to the charter hanging on the boardroom wall. It belongs to the people who hold the keys to the engine room. If a process ignores the people doing the work, the entire system collapses the moment they step away.
Too right. Though I reckon replacing academic safety advocates with political and financial heavyweights leaves us with a pretty lingering tension. Did we actually solve workplace governance? Or did we just trade existential paranoia for ultimate corporate speed?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? All right, good chatting. Talk soon, mate.